My name is Lily. It was my 18th birthday, and I sat across from my mother, stepfather Tom, and stepsister Ava at the breakfast table. The kitchen smelled of pancakes, and there was a manila folder waiting beside my plate. My mother, Diana, wore a bright smile and a silk robe, but there was a calculating glint in her eyes. She hugged me tightly and said, "Happy birthday, sweetheart." I thanked her and took a couple of bites of pancakes. Then, she folded her hands and said, "Now that you're 18, we should discuss your grandfather's money." The folder slid smoothly across the table towards me. I opened it and saw the Garcia Family Financial Unification Agreement. It was the same document that Mr. Thompson, my grandfather's attorney, had shown me. The document aimed to make my mother a co-trustee, giving her financial control over my inheritance of $700,000. Part of the trust would transfer to a company called Thompson and Garcia Holdings, LLC, and Ava's tuition was included. As I read, my mother's smile faded from confident to irritated, then to nervous. Tom snapped, "You don't need to read every line." I looked up calmly and said, "I like understanding what I sign." I turned the pages slowly and asked, "Mom, what exactly is Thompson and Garcia Holdings, LLC?" Her smile twitched, "Oh, just a family company. Tax stuff." When I asked when it was created, she said she didn't remember. Tom interrupted, "Lily, enough. Just sign it." I looked at him and said, "You mentioned your lawyer earlier." His jaw tightened. My mother quickly jumped in, "Honey, this is all for your protection." But I kept reading. I noticed it was version 4.3, generated 4 months ago. I closed the folder and said quietly, "Mom, this document was written while I was still a minor." She answered too quickly, "We were preparing for your future." I tilted my head, using parental authority to control my inheritance? Her face showed a tiny panic. Tom leaned forward, "Sign the papers, Lily." I stayed calm and asked, "How long have you known Mr. Reed, your lawyer?" Silence filled the kitchen. My mother whispered, "We never mentioned his name." I replied, "That's what concerns me." Ava looked terrified. My mother tried again with a soft voice, "Lily, honey, you don't understand how dangerous money can be at your age." I nodded slowly, "You're right." For a second, relief crossed her face. Then I said, "That's why I already hired an attorney." Just then, my phone vibrated on the table. It was Mr. Thompson. Tom snapped, "Don't answer that." I picked up the phone calmly, "I think I will." I pressed speaker, "Good morning, Mr. Thompson." His calm voice filled the kitchen, "Happy birthday, Lily. I hope I'm not interrupting breakfast." I said softly, "We were discussing money." He continued, "I'm calling to confirm the Margaret Trust transfer completed successfully at 12:04 a.m. today. The trust is fully funded and irrevocable." My mother dropped her fork, and Tom clenched his fists. Ava whispered, "What trust?" Mr. Thompson explained, "A protected trust established solely for Lily's benefit." Tom exploded, "What the hell are you talking about?" Mr. Thompson remained calm, "I'd advise careful language, Mr. Tom." Tom quickly sat back down. Mr. Thompson then mentioned the Reed documents, the whistle-blower, the complaint, and the disciplinary board. He explained why the documents were unethical, how they targeted a minor, and how they violated fiduciary duty. He said Mr. Reed was already under investigation. He asked me, "Lily, can you confirm the document in front of you?" I looked at the folder and said yes. Ava covered her mouth, and Tom muttered, "This is a setup." Mr. Thompson replied, "No, Mr. Tom. A setup requires deception." Lily simply read what was placed in front of her. I looked at my mother and asked, "Did you know what was in these papers?" Tears filled her eyes, and she broke, "Yes." Ava made a choking sound. Tom slammed his hand on the table. You did all this behind our backs? I looked at him and said, No, Tom. I handled my business legally at 12:01 a.m. You planned yours behind my back for 4 months while I was still 17. I opened page 9 and read the line about Ava's tuition support. Nobody denied it. I closed the folder and said, I'll keep this. My mother started crying, but I interrupted. I think we need professionals present before we discuss the word sacrifice. Then Mr. Thompson said, Lily, your Aunt Sarah is waiting at the end of the driveway. I stood up, picked up my phone and the folder, put on my jacket. At the door, I looked at Ava. I knew she was 16 and didn't create this mess. I told her to text me in a year, and she nodded silently. I walked outside to my Aunt Sarah's car. The morning air was fresh and honest. I thought leaving would end everything, but it was just the start of a war. My father died when I was 8. He was a kind-hearted man, a school teacher. One rainy day, he was hit by a drunk driver on his way home. My mother was devastated at first, but soon she became cold and calculating. 2 years later, she married Tom, a construction worker with a booming voice and strong opinions. He brought his daughter Ava into our house. Ava was 6 at that time, a talkative and energetic girl. I quickly learned that showing emotions around my mother was a bad idea. If I cried, she called me weak. If I laughed too loudly, she said I was being inappropriate. So, by the time I was 10, I stopped showing my feelings in front of her. My grandparents, on the other hand, were my safe haven. My grandmother, Margaret, would sit with me on the porch swing and tell me I didn't have to be strong all the time. My grandfather, Harold, gave me a cedar box on my 15th birthday. It was the last gift he gave me himself. One October evening, I was cleaning my room because my mother hated mess. I opened the cedar box that I hadn't touched in months. Inside, there was a pressed flower, a photo of my grandparents in their garden, and a sealed white envelope. On the envelope, in my grandfather's handwriting, it said, "Open only if something feels off with your mother before your 18th birthday. Call Mr. Thompson immediately." I heard soft voices downstairs. My mother and Tom were talking quietly. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I felt a knot in my chest. I put the envelope back in the box and went downstairs as if nothing had happened. Grandma Margaret passed away when I was 12 due to heart disease. She held my hand and whispered, "You're a good girl, Lily. Don't let anyone change that." I didn't cry until I was in the car with Grandpa. He just sat there in silence, letting me grieve. After Grandma's death, Grandpa became quieter. The summer I turned 14, I stayed with him for 2 months. We grew tomatoes, read books together, and had quiet breakfasts. It was the happiest time of my life. Then, one morning in September, Grandpa had a heart attack and passed away. At the funeral, my mother cried in a controlled way, while Tom checked his phone in the back row. 2 weeks later, the will was read. Grandpa had left me a trust of $700,000 from stocks, cash, and land sale profits. The trust would transfer to me on my 18th birthday. Mr. Thompson was in charge. There was a handwritten note from Grandpa that said, "Your choice. Your life. Love, Grandpa." My mother stared at the note for a long time. I could tell she was already scheming. 6 months before my birthday, a man in a gray suit started visiting our house every Wednesday afternoon. My mother changed his identity every week, saying he was an insurance agent, a financial advisor, or a friend of Tom's. One snowy afternoon in January, I came home early from the library. I heard my mother say, "Once she signs, the rest is automatic." Tom asked, "And if she hesitates?" My mother laughed softly, "She won't. Lily always listens." I opened the door loudly, and when I walked in, the table was empty. My mother smiled too brightly and offered me cocoa. I noticed the embossed letters of Reed and Associates, Family Wealth Planning, sticking out from under her purse. Ava walked in and casually asked, "Is that about Lily's money?" Tom snapped at her to go upstairs. That was when I knew something was wrong. I finally opened Grandpa's envelope one Friday afternoon. I went to the park alone. The letter inside said that if I was reading it, something had gone wrong with my mother. It gave me Mr. Thompson's phone number. I called him, and he said he had been expecting my call. He asked me to come to his office the next week, telling my mother it was about college aid. He also told me not to change my behavior at home. In his office, he explained everything about trusts, beneficiaries, and legal control. He showed me the Garcia Family Financial Unification Agreement and said my mother had been working with Mr. Reed. I was shocked. They had been planning this for 4 months. Mr. Thompson said Grandpa had prepared for this possibility. He offered to create a new trust, the Margaret Trust, which would be irrevocable and protected. I agreed. Over the next 2 months, we built the trust piece by piece. We excluded my mother, Tom, and Ava from any legal control. The trust would cover my school, housing, medical care, and emergencies. One afternoon, my Aunt Sarah called me. She told me that my father had tried to set up a trust for me 6 months before he died, but my mother had fought him until he backed down. It was about $500,000 in life insurance. The Sunday before my birthday, my mother made a roast. During dinner, I asked about the difference between a trust and a family account. My mother said family accounts were simpler and trusts were cold. Tom said family money should stay in family hands and accidentally mentioned the corporate trustee. Ava suddenly said, "Mom says the money was supposed to help all of us anyway." My mother quickly covered it up, but it was too late. 2 days before my birthday, my mother planned a big dinner at the country club. There were 15 guests. During dessert, she stood up and said, "To my brave daughter, who's going to make very smart decisions tomorrow." I saw Mr. Reed sitting alone with a salad and a briefcase. I smiled through dinner. On the night of my birthday, I locked my bedroom door. At 12 a.m. I signed the documents for the Margaret Trust. At 12:04 a.m. The transfer was complete. After that, I went to live with my Aunt Sarah in a small apartment in the city. It was warm and full of life. My mother called and texted me many times, but I blocked them all on my aunt's advice. Back in my hometown, my mother started losing control of the story. People in the town began to connect the dots. Tom's finances collapsed because the inheritance money was part of his future plans. His business fell apart and he had to move out. Ava lost her chance at her first choice college and had to choose a cheaper one. Mr. Reed was investigated by the disciplinary board. Other families came forward, and he lost his law license for 3 years. In late May, Ava texted me, "I didn't know she wanted all of it. I thought it was just for my tuition." "I swear." I replied, "I know. You were in the kitchen, not behind the paperwork." She apologized, and I invited her for coffee when she turned 18. August came, and it was time for me to move into college. I brought Grandpa's lamp, my books, and the cedar box with me. My roommate, Mia, was a warm-hearted girl. She said she didn't talk to her mom much either, and it made me feel better. My mother texted me a couple of times during the first semester, asking if I was safe and saying she missed me. I didn't answer. I finally understood that access to me was not automatic anymore. One Sunday, my Aunt Sarah called and asked, "How's your heart?" I looked around my dorm room and said, "It's quiet." She asked, "Good quiet or bad quiet?" I smiled and said, "Good quiet." She said, "That's peace, Lily." A year after signing the trust papers, I sat in the library, checking the trust statement online. The account had grown. I saw my grandparents' names at the bottom of the page. I touched the screen and closed the laptop. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Ava with a picture of her dorm room. She asked if we could have coffee in May. I smiled and replied, yes. I'll drive. For the first time in my life, the future felt like mine. Grandpa had been right all along. It was my choice, my life.